Why is there air?
Good morning, good morning. We are the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app and thezone1059.com. And football season is here, thank goodness. And we're all, well, I think most everybody is fired up about it. It's going to be, even if your team's not good, you're going to have a good football season because of all the great games in college football and the NFL. So that's a good thing, and the access that we have. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue, the official healthcare provider of the Out of Bounds Show. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. We welcome in Steve Robertson, owner of jeanspage.com, 247 Sports, the Boneyard Podcast. All right, Steve, let's talk football. I know it's early, but do you have anything that you can share with me and the audience as far as what you're hearing about Mississippi State football?
Well, I mean, it was a good first week. You know, I mean, there's only so much you can tell that first week. A lot of it's just kind of going back over install from the spring. And then, of course, a lot of new faces, you know, especially in that offensive line that didn't get the benefit of spring. And so it's Bill Holt's job to kind of get those guys, you know, meshed into a cohesive group. And, you know, we'll see how things go. We'll get an opportunity to watch a little practice this morning and eager to get out there and just kind of see how things look. But the reality of it is that, you know, Mississippi State's got a lot of work in front of them. You know, I worked over the weekend kind of looking at the success of second-year coaches in the last 50 years. 6 of those 8 at Mississippi State made a bowl game, you know. And so if that trend continues, that would be, you know, a good thing for Coach Jeff Levy. But, you know, people are not optimistic about that aspect of it. But the reality of it is until we play the games, you don't really know what you have.
All right, so there are still people that want to believe that, you know, we're always about the backup quarterback or even the backup. And with Shapen not playing much last year, what game did he get knocked out, Steve? I can't even remember.
Florida.
Okay, Florida at home. All right. So with that, we've had people text in that they believe Kamario Taylor's going to be the QB. I get that he's talented, but even though Shapen has battled injuries throughout his career at Baylor and Mississippi State, this is Blake Shapen's team until if he doesn't get hurt, it's his team, or until, God forbid, he gets injured. I mean, don't you believe this guy is clearly the guy to lead the way in 2025?
I do. Now, Kamario Taylor is one of the best athletes on the football team, not just in the quarterback room. I mean, he is a freak of an athlete. And so that doesn't mean he's the best quarterback right now. He's the best athlete, but he's not the best quarterback. People forget, like Blake Shapen in those 4 games last year, threw 8 touchdowns against 1 interception. You know, he had the bad fumble against Arizona State, turned into a scoop and score, but you know, Blake was really good at protecting the football. Ball security was clearly a strength for him, and that's going to have to be the case. And if you go look at kind of what Van Buren did while he showed some flashes, I mean, there were some other games that, you know, he took a lot of chances and Mississippi State paid for him. You know, I watched just yesterday, went back and watched the Arizona State, Texas A&M, and the Egg Bowl just to kind of get back into it in that respect. But there were a lot of times last year when there were opportunities and plays to be made offensively, and the inexperienced quarterback didn't make it. And that's not to just, you know, put all this on Michael Van Buren. There's going to be up and down with some young quarterbacks. But, I think Blake Shapen is head and shoulders above everybody else right now. Kromenhoek, of course, has got a little starting experience under his belt. So I feel like the quarterback room is in good shape, and Kamario Taylor is clearly the future, and I think you'll see him some this year. And, you know, he's been in a lot of these highlight videos they're tweeting out. So there's some room for optimism about the future. But, yeah, I think you'll see him play some this year. But by and large, it should be Blake Shapen taking the majority of the snaps.
Okay, but you expect them to create – I mean, when you say that, you expect them to create some red zone packages for him or short yardage packages for Kamario Taylor? And do you think that Kamario will leapfrog Kromenhoek to get the reps when they do want to sub over Kromenhoek, and that Kamario will be the guy that will go in after Shapen, regardless of what happens?
Yeah, I'm not ready to make that leap just yet. But yeah, I do think you're going to see all three guys play, especially in some of these games where you get some separation one way or another. I think you've got to go use those 4 games for Camario, let him get his feet wet and see what he can do and put some things on tape. But, Kromenhoek was second highest rated quarterback in the portal. And so this is a guy that's got a lot of ability as well. And there are some people, obviously, because, familiarity with names makes a difference, right? And then you see all this stuff with Camario and social, so it's easy to kind of get behind that. But Kromenhoek is a very talented quarterback in his own right, and so I don't think you can sleep on him either.
Okay. All right. The running game, you mentioned Shapen 8-1, 8 touchdowns to 1 pick before he was hurt, which is pretty damn strong. And he didn't have a running game. I think they're going to be 2-3 times better running the football. So if he does stay healthy, even though he doesn't have a talent like Coleman, who I think is the best they've had since Molds, how do you handicap that as far as how the offense looks as I roll that out, as I lay that out?
And what's interesting, too, is ironically, it's the game that he got hurt when the running game kind of found some success. That Davin Booth kind of got going. He didn't get the benefit of spring last year. And so it took him, a handful of games to kind of get rolling. But I think the running game this year should be a strength. And Jeff Levy was very candid about that last spring, about how that running back room had to get better. And then you find out beginning of fall, Jeffrey Pittman's not going to be a part of it. So, your top returner is no longer available. And so they had to kind of figure that thing out. And I thought Johnny Daniels served as a good complementary piece last year. He's a hard-nosed runner. But when you bring in Fluff Bothwell and then you get, Gayton back and have the ability to kind of use him as a situational guy, I think you feel really good about the room. And Levy's been very forthright about that, about how much progress they've made in the running back room. And they want to run the football. And the reality of it is the state's got to be in a situation where you can run the football and be pretty balanced on offense, because there were a lot of games last year they were having to chase the game. In first quarters was the least amount of points. They scored 65 points last year in first quarters, which was the most futile quarter offensively. And that's what happens, though, is you weren't able to score early. You get behind, and then as a result, you get a little one-dimensional offensively. And so hopefully, you can use that running game, have some balance, and kind of lean on people a little bit and not constantly have to throw the football, which makes you so much more predictable.
So the offensive line is just a huge question mark because of the guys they added after spring practice in May or June, right, Steve?
Well, I think from a depth standpoint it is, because when you really break this thing down, Cannon Boone was a starter, got hurt in the Arkansas game. He's back. Luke Work was a starter. Albert Reese was the whole award winner last year. And then there's Jacoby Jackson. So, you're going to return 4 of 5, first half of the year type starters. And I think you feel good about what those guys can do. But the reality of it is you got to land on a center. And, of course, they went out and signed, a handful of guys in the portal. They really committed a lot of scholarship spots to more veteran offensive linemen. And so I feel good about the look of that group. It's going to be about building chemistry here over the course of the next, 4 weeks before you get to Southern Miss. But, yeah, there are some question marks, but it's not like it's a completely revamped room.
Okay. Steve Robertson, genespage.com. Let's go to the defensive side of the football, who were god awful. I think it's the worst defense in my lifetime, and that includes like 03 when Jackie was heading out the door, and maybe a year under Rocky or something like that. So when we're talking about bigger dudes, more athletic, and hoping that McIntyre and Rhodes can steer Coleman Hutzler in the right direction, what are your realistic expectations on what the defensive line can be this year for MSU compared to last year? And do they have an edge rusher that can at least somewhat get to the quarterback? Because what was the total sack number last year?
10.
Yeah.
10.
Good Lord.
Yeah, just saying it out loud. You're just like, what? And I think that not only were they last in the SEC in actual sacks, they were last in actual pressures. And a lot of that is, I think, personnel. And of course, you've committed a lot of scholarship spots to that, and you brought in Vincent Dancy. And I think sometimes too, that kind of gets maybe lost in the conversation sometimes because we are so excited about the additions of McIntyre and Rhodes. But Jeff Lovey went out and kind of made some changes off the field to shore up that defense in addition to the commitment on the portal side. But, if they're just above average, I think you can have a much better year just because how many times last year, like I think about that Tennessee game, right? That game was still in the balance in the second half, and State was making some plays, but eventually they just lined up behind that big offensive line and says, we're going to give Sampson the football, and if you can stop us, you can stop us, and State couldn't, and the game gets away from you. And then you look at what the bloodletting the Arkansas game proved to be, which is arguably the worst matchup State had last year, just from personnel standpoint and the fact that philosophically Sam Pittman and Bobby Petrino wanted to line up running football. It's a terrible matchup for State.
With a true freshman because their starter had gotten hurt the week before and they ran through him for like 9.8 yards a carry or some good hell.
And goodness, and if he doesn't pull a hamstring, who knows what happens? It was an abysmal performance, but you went out and you feel like you've corrected that. And if nothing else, they look like an SEC defensive line. Last year they did not. And listen, there was a couple of highly recruited players last year on that group that just either got banged up or didn't perform. And so you didn't have much depth. And I go back to the Arkansas game. I think we've talked about it on the air before. You had, if memory serves me correct, you had Kai McClendon, a true freshman, starting alongside Corey Clark, who was a junior college guy that didn't have anywhere to go. And so he was kind of a depth piece. So you're lining up with two guys that, might have had 50 combined SEC snaps under their belt, and you're going to turn them loose against a very physical Arkansas offensive line. I mean, it's just cruel and unusual punishment. And so you won't be in that situation this year just because from personnel standpoint, things are so much better. But, people talk about how many tackles the linebackers got last year. Well, somebody had to make them, because.
Well, Isaac Smith led the league because the first two levels couldn't tackle me. Right.
Well, Isaac lined up a lot of linebacker last year. And that's, he's more of a box safety than he is an over-the-top guy. And then you throw in Stone Blanton. Stone was one of the top tacklers in the conference, too. And so you get two guys with 120-plus tackles because you just simply couldn't get any push up front, and you didn't have guys that could fit gaps. And so, you're giving up 4 or 5 yards a carry at a minimum, and you just can't get off the field like that. And so you got to play complementary football, but it all starts up front. On both sides of the line of scrimmage, State should be better on the offensive line, and they should be markedly better on the defensive line. And I think that makes life a whole lot easier. And, the secondary showed some flashes at times last year. Even in the Egg Bowl, I thought those guys played pretty well. But the reality of it is you can't cover forever. You got to have some guys get pressure on the quarterback. And if you can do that, then all of a sudden, average play count comes down. You don't have guys out there having to, scramble to defend wide receivers because, how many times last year did you see where State actually got good coverage and then a receiver works back to the quarterback on third down and extends a drive? And it's because you couldn't get the quarterback on the ground.
Which goes back to what you said 2 weeks ago on the show, and that is you got to run the football, and you got to convert first downs to give your defense some time on the sideline. And they will be better running the football. We'll see how much better. Got a question from a listener. You mentioned Guyton, running back. True freshman last year.
Yep.
So basically the question is this guy, is he a legit SEC guy or is he more of a G5 guy?
I've always liked him, and I like him at running back. When he was first coming up down in Brookhaven, I wondered if he wouldn't be a safety, but he is an explosive player, and I would venture to say he was State's most explosive running back last year. He just kind of had to learn the position a little bit better. Kind of ran a little wildcat stuff there at Brookhaven. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like just letting him get by on athleticism. But he had to kind of learn the nuances of the position, and we expect to see a more polished product this year. But on the one touchdown that he scored, there was nobody running that guy down. And once he broke into the secondary, it was a foot race, and he won it. And so I think he is an interesting piece. I don't think that he's a guy that's going to carry, the football a lot, but I do think you put him in there and he can save some wear and tear. And he is a guy that can pop a little bit too. And he has added a little bulk too. So, he runs behind his pads pretty well. But when I think about this running back room, Bo,
it's Fluff first.
I remember sometimes last year, like I would turn to Mike Neiman at the middle of the ball game, and I'd be like, "What are we doing? What are we doing?" Right? And Booth early on, if you recall, he had trouble finding the ball, and then trouble finding the hole. He just couldn't really navigate and read his blocks well. And there would be times that an offensive lineman would have a guy sealed to the outside, and rather than cut inside the block, we ran outside and then run into a tackle. Well, about halfway through the year, he kind of figured that thing out, which I think speaks a lot about Anthony Tucker and about Davin Booth, is it took him a little while to kind of figure this thing out. And then you think about all the carries that Fluff had last year at South Alabama. I just think this group is going to be a lot better than they were last year, which will take a lot of pressure off the quarterback room.
So Fluff, the running back from South Alabama, I mean, they actually beat Ole Miss, who's beat them on I don't know how many players the last few years, and has beat a lot of people in the portal. I mean, they beat Ole Miss and some worthy teams for Fluff, the running back out of South Alabama. Am I right there, Steve?
Yeah, and pretty much as soon as Fluff got up there, and this is not a shot at Ole Miss. I know people always expect that, but the reality of it is there are some guys who just fit in better at State, and there are some guys who just fit in better at Ole Miss.
Sure.
And after the visit, he's a small town Alabama kid, and just felt more comfortable here. It wasn't that anybody did anything wrong at Ole Miss. He just didn't feel as comfortable there, and just felt like he would have more success here. And so he's here. There's some guys out there that are just a better cultural fit for one school or another in this state. And that's kind of how this thing kind of boiled down with Fluff, is he just felt like that, Jeff Lebby and Starkville was a better fit for him. And he should be a very valuable piece this year, especially when you're trying to put a game away. When you've got Booth already and you feel good about his production, and then you think about Fluff, as physical as he is, and then Johnny Daniels. I mean, this is a team I think will play well with a lead, because I think they're going to have the ability to kind of lean on people and run the football with some success.
All right. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. They're loaded up with content. Okay? They're locked in. Football, obviously, but anytime Brian O'Connor or anything happens in the baseball program and so on, Jans, Hubbard, they're there. Do you expect – this is going to be an interesting answer from you. Charles Huff versus Jeff Lebby, game 1. Should this game be close?
Well, I think it'll be competitive for maybe a half or maybe 3/4. I think in the end, State should be able to out-athlete them. But, what's the line on that game right now? 13.5, something like that. That's probably about right. We'll see. And listen, if State goes down there and beats them well, I don't think that's an indictment on Southern Miss. I think Huff's going to do really well down there. And you're getting them game 1, right? I mean, there's just so many things that go wrong in game 1, because you just hadn't done it before. And you got a lot of new faces, and they got a ton of transfers too. And so it'll be interesting, and I think it'll probably be closer than some Mississippi State fans want. But, I do expect State to go down there and win that game and probably cover. But if State goes down there and wins that game big, then I think you can feel, somewhat optimistic. But at the end of the day, you got to understand it's the first game for a new staff and a new stadium. A lot of expectations, obviously. And I do think Huff's going to do well there. Maybe not this year, but I think he is going to do really well there.
Yeah, I think they're going to win a bunch of games this year, like 8-4 or something like that. But we'll see. Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. We were talking defense a few minutes ago. If somebody is going to emerge, or one or two guys, as pass rushers, who's the leader in the clubhouse? Who's it going to be, Steve?
Yeah, I really like Will Whitson, but I'm curious to see how they're going to use him. He's a guy that he could play 3 in some alignments. He could play the 5 tack. He could get out there on the edge at times. I think that he's a guy that was a big get for State, obviously. That was one of those bigger wins in the portal. And then you look at Malik Sela, a guy that has got length for days, and he's a guy that didn't have a lot of time at A&M, but he has flashed some early on, and the staff seems to be excited about him. But, I think a lot of this, too, is just Vincent Dancy's addition. If you look at what he did at Colorado, with the ability to get TFLs up there, if he gets anywhere close here, I think you're going to feel really good about things. And listen, a lot of times it's not just getting the sack, right? It's just influencing the quarterback and, maybe forcing an early throw or forcing an off-balance throw. And the more they throw it, the better chance you got to catch one of them too. And, I tell you a guy that I'm really excited about, and he flashed down the stretch last year, is Zachary Tillman out of Florence. He was a guy that was when we first found him, he was a safety. And then by the time he got to be a senior, he was absolutely a linebacker because he kind of ate his way out of the position, right? I mean, he bulked up. And then you saw last year, he had like a block punt, and then he had the big sack of Jackson Dart in the Egg Bowl. I mean, this is a guy that has kind of put himself in a situation where they just can't keep him off the field. It's like if you ever let him out there, you're going to have to keep him out there because he's going to keep flashing. And this is a guy we talk about, this linebacker room and all these new additions, but I think sometimes people forget Zachary in the mix, and the guy's just a football player, and he is a guy that finds the football, and that's the number one thing on defense. We go back to even Pee Wee and Pop Warner football. The number one goal of defense is to go get the football, and that's just something that Zachary Tillman just has a very natural ability to do, to diagnose a play, work the angle, and go get the football. And don't be surprised if he has a huge year for State this year.
Okay. All right. Steve Robertson, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. One thing I will say, too, that, talking with Cliff Odom, who is a fabulous guy. I don't know if you've had a chance to interact with him very often, but he seems to be pretty optimistic about his group on the special team side. I mean, and you'd expect that with Kyle Ferry. I think Kyle missed, one extra point and 2 field goals last year. Really, really consistent. So they feel pretty good about that. And, Nick Barmera isn't here, so they're kind of figuring out some things on the punting side. But, this is a team that's not going to be able to give away like those mystery yards on special teams. You're going to have to go out there and convert and cover. And I think just talking to Cliff, on and off the record, I get the feeling that he feels really good about his group here in year 2. And when you're going to be in a lot of these toss-up games, special teams are going to matter. And I think in some respects, if State is successful in getting to a bowl game, I think Cliff Odom's going to be a big part of that, he and his group, just because I think so many of these toss-up games are going to be very close. And those special teams plays could be the difference in winning and losing.
Steve, we appreciate it, man. Thanks.
See you, bud.
GenesPage.com, 247 Sports. A lot on the line this year for Mississippi State football. They need to bounce back. They need to start off 4-0. On paper, they're better than every team, including Arizona State. Arizona State doesn't even recruit in the 50s. Yet Dillingham just kind of found some mojo, right? And some transfers. One of them's with the New York Giants now. And Sam Leavitt may be top 2 or 3 quarterback in the country. We're live in the Bank Plus studio.